Are you curious how to paint intuitive figures? I'm Pat from Scrivener Art and Design. In today's video, I'm going to show you how I take a messy background, something where I've been cleaning my brush out, adding stencils, mark making, etc., and I find figures in it and bring them forward and try to tell a story. So every painting comes out very different. I did this in a workshop. I didn't finish taking the video of the whole painting, but if you stick around till the end, I will show you the completed painting with all the revisions and some close-up details. If you're enjoying my videos, please consider subscribing to my channel, hitting the little bell button for notification, and giving the video a thumbs up. Also, please leave a comment, ask a question. I'd be happy to help. So let's get started. I've mapped out my figures with chalk on my messy background, and I put in 4 figures. I've decided to eliminate one. It probably could have worked, but I decided that 3 maybe was better proportionately. Odd numbers sometimes. I don't follow the rule always, but I often find 4 can be awkward. Once you get up to 6, I don't think it matters so much. And 2 always works because in our mind, we understand that 2 is a couple, and that makes sense. So in any event, I have decided to use 3 figures. And now I'm continuing painting in some negative spaces, and I'm using a darker gray color that I've mixed from the colors on my palette and added a little bit of black possibly to it. So I find the legs can be difficult to wrap your head around which part is the leg and which part is the negative. It takes a little while, and that's why I like to put the chalk lines. So I'm again painting in on the background. Now, I paint my background several times, and if you've watched some of my other videos, you have seen me do this, and for several reasons. One is I think it adds a nice depth to the background. It's not as flat looking, so it makes it more interesting. But also throughout the painting, I'm doing adjustments on the figures. And when I do adjustments, I'm going to use negative painting, and I'm not necessarily going to mix the same color. And I'm not worried about mixing the same color because I like the modulation. The other reason I might paint my background again is because the color isn't working as well as it should. Perhaps I need to make it more neutralized, push it back further, not have it so dark, more contrast with my figures so that they pop forward. So there's all kinds of reasons to adjust the background. Now you see me coming back in with a kind of a yellow-green, green-gold color that I've made with the paint on my palette. So this is most likely made with ultramarine blue and lemon yellow, very bright yellow. And I am trying to paint my whole painting. If you put something somewhere, add it in another place. That's very important so that you keep the connection flowing. At the same time, I'm trying to preserve as much as the background inside the figures as possible. Now I'm putting some hair on, and I'm using the bright green. They won't stay bright green. Well, they didn't stay bright green. But I like that little bit of paint to show through underneath. I think that also helps give a relationship to the overall painting. Now I'm coming back in with some teal paint. This is not a mixed color. It is golden teal fluid paint straight from the bottle. I do use a combination of fluid and heavy body paints. I used to pretty much stick with fluid paints, but I find when I'm painting upright on the wall, the fluid paints can be a little bit on the runny side. So it depends exactly what I'm doing. But the other thing is I do like to have differences. Differences are really important. And the differences between heavy body and fluid paint can make an interesting textural shift in your work. So I like that as well. So I'm just adding a few bits of color just to identify the shapes a little bit more. I've turned it upside down now. I've decided that I'm going to put an awning on the top here. There was a little bit too much headroom and background, so my middle guy there is holding what I thought looked like a takeout coffee cup. So I'm going to make this like a little cafe awning at the top of my painting, and that'll just add some interest, and I'm evolving the story as I go. And this is where the intuition comes in when you're painting, that you don't plan the painting from beginning to end. You start by finding something, and then one thing kind of leads to the other. So I put that upside down so it was easier to reach. I'm now coming back in, adding white so that I have a pure white background to add another color on. I won't be leaving it white. That's far too stark. Your eye wants to go where the highest point of contrast is, and I don't want it to be at the top of the painting. So as much as I do love the white and black, that's not where I want my eye to end up going and staying. If you are interested in learning how to paint intuitive figures in my style and my methods, I have some online virtual workshops and also some workshops in my studio in Parksville on Vancouver Island. I'll leave some more information in the description below. You will find the links and you can go and find out more about the courses. If you have any questions, you can either just submit a request on my online store, or you could just leave a comment on YouTube, or also use the contact form on my website to send me a message. Now you see me painting again around the figures, doing a little bit of clarifying, cleaning up some edges. I've made a little bit of a different color here, adding a bit of green to it, just so it associates somewhat with the figures as well. And I have a little bit more variety in my background. When you're working with color in a painting, it's sometimes easy to end up with a painting that is not consistently warm looking or cool colors. it can be split in the middle and be 50-50, and you don't want to end up with a painting that isn't pushed one way or the other. So in this example of painting, I've got more of the cool colors of blue and greens, and then my warm colors are my accent. So even though my green is a warmer green, I'm still seeing this as a painting that's predominantly feeling cool. My background is cool as well. I've put the darker color on the bottom of the background in this painting as well, just to anchor it more. The other thing that I always try to consider when I'm doing paintings like this is that the figures are shapes, and I'm trying to create differences in the shapes as well so that they're more interesting. I'm not usually one for putting in too many details on the face or the hands. If you take a close look at my painting at the end of the video, when I show close-ups and the finished painting, you will see that I actually totally painted out my coffee guy's head and hat. I started to feel like it was too big, and I reduced it down considerably. So I didn't capture that on camera, but I think it improved it. So even though sometimes we don't want to mess with things because they feel finished, sometimes it's important. So I'm trying these letters that are cut out of some kind of a pressed cardboard. I got them at a industry waste store in Vancouver called Urban Source. You may have one of these stores in your area where it's all industry waste, and you can fill up a bag. In the case of Urban Source, you pick a bag size, and it's a flat price, and you can put as much in there as you want, as you can fit. And if you're a good packer, man, can you get a lot of stuff. Some things can be limited to only a handful, just because maybe they're more scarce or more popular. But it's a great way for artists to find some new fodder for their work. So I'm continuing on with the story of my cafe, and these letters were lime green, and I had what I needed. So it just adds a little bit of interest and whimsy to my painting, and actually gives it a little bit of dimensionality because they are raised. So again, just adding some color in and kind of finessing the shapes a little bit, adding a bit more darks in. So again, trying not to lose all the wonderful pattern and optical texture that I had in the background, but also trying to have some juicier paint. The other thing you'll notice at the end in the picture is that I did change Coffee Guy's arm as well. I fattened it up and changed the angle somewhat. So here you see me going back in to the awning and extending it across the whole painting. It just felt a little unfinished. Even though my one gal is quite tall and is in front of the awning, I found that I needed to take the eye across. In the end, I also changed her hair color so that she did feel like she was forward. So you can take note of that as well. So often it's hard to really plan the painting. We have to try things. And here I'm trying red on the awning. And I think red is a nice color for an awning and certainly stands out. If you want to test something out, I really encourage you to use an app and test some things. Now, I use the UDoodle app a lot for this just little kind of changing things in my painting and testing ideas. I wouldn't use it to do actual digital art. For that, you need to have something more robust like Procreate, but for just trying some ideas out, UDoodle is a great one, and apparently it only works on iOS, but there are other options for Android if you just do a search and find something that doesn't have a big learning curve, and I think you'll find it really, really valuable. So now I'm changing his hat color to tie in with the awning more, so that, yeah, there's just a better connection there. So on small paintings, often I just use paint to test my ideas, but a lot of times on the bigger paintings, for sure, it takes a lot of work to make a lot of changes, so I will test it before I try it on my panel. So I've changed my mind on the awning, deciding that it was just too dominant, and came back in with the teal, but left a little smidge of the red popping out underneath, and I kind of like that. So never think that it's a mistake. Always just think that you're building up history in your painting, and that makes it more interesting to have changes and multiple layers and bits and pieces of it sticking through. So here I've painted her hair red, and I'm painting the purse red. And you'll see that I didn't fall in love with this idea. But again, we don't know until we try. And like I said, sometimes I paint the underpainting of the hair, so I have little bits of it sticking out so it doesn't look quite so flat. So coming back in over top. Now you have to make sure that these colors are dry, otherwise you're going to end up getting some kind of brown or color you don't want. So again, the hat, I'm leaving a little bit of the red, and that is a trick that I really like. I find it better than actually going around and outlining afterwards. It's not quite as perfect feeling. So finessing under the awning a bit, a little bit of negative painting in around her neck, just kind of cleaning up some edges. So I go back and forth between working on the actual figures to working on the background, and just keep developing the painting as I go. In the end, I also did give this gal with the circles a little bit more of a form, not quite such a straight dress. So I made her shape a little more interesting. So this is to give you the gist of the idea of my process and how I work up a painting. I am a layerist. I'm a process painter. For me, it's all about the process of doing it and not the product or the results. So I'm putting the purse back to black, but I'm leaving a little bit of the under painting of red peeking through. Here's a close-up detail. So you can notice that I changed his hat color again. I changed up the dress of the lady on the left. I added an arm on the other lady on the right. I changed the coffee mug to a red color instead of black to bring a little bit more emphasis. And like I said earlier, I actually repainted the whole head of my coffee man. I brought his head, I made it smaller and brought it down. It just seemed a little bit too awkward. So there it is. I hope you enjoyed it, and please leave any comments or questions you have below. And until next time, happy creating.